I'd say I'd put it at least at the same level as COVID. You're not going to have the sort of death rates and the risk we had there. But the effect on our society is going to be fundamental. And the follow-on effects will probably last longer because we haven't learnt from our COVID experience.
John Blackburn spent 4 decades in the Air Force, rising to Deputy Chief. For years, he's been warning that Australia is too reliant on imported fuel, too thin on reserves, and too exposed if a global crisis, like this one, disrupts supply.
Both sides of politics, despite repeated warnings and engagements, have failed to get it.
Now, as more than 100 petrol stations run dry, and a Trump ultimatum over the Iran war looms, threatening to make the fuel crisis even worse, the government's accused of failing the country by failing to prepare. I'm Nicole Johnston, and you're listening to 7am. Today, Chair of the Institute of Economic Research Australia, John Blackburn, on where the country's emergency fuel plan falls short, and is it too late to fix it? It's Tuesday, March 24. John, you've been wargaming a situation like this for over a decade. And now that it's here, what is it that you're worried about most? Is it price shocks, or is it that we face an actual shortage?
Oh, we'll face an actual shortage, there's no doubt about that. What I'm worried about, the flow-on effects, it's far more than fuel. We're reacting to the fuel issue because the prices are hitting us and we can see a problem coming. It's much more than that. When you think about the exports out of that particular part of the world through the Strait of Hormuz, we're already seeing the effect on fertiliser prices. But it goes way beyond that, and which is why I've been saying, in addition to the fuel task force they've set up, good step, we need to have a non-fuel task force set up because these other shortages will impact the global market. So we have two things: react to the current problem. What can we do as it starts to actually impact us? Because it hasn't impacted our supply chain yet. All the impact in our society is because of how we've reacted. So that's the next stage, but we've got to look beyond fuel.
So when you say we have to look beyond fuel, what is it you're talking about? What other products could we end up being short of?
Okay, so right now about 20% of the world's oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz and about 25% of liquid natural gas. That's going to have a huge effect. But there's the refined petroleum products and condensate. So here's a couple of things. Sulfur and sulfuric acid, big supplies, going to affect a lot of things in production and industry. High purity gases, specialty chemicals, chlorine and caustic soda. About 30-something% of the world's helium is coming out of there. Try and do an MRI without helium. There's a lot of other things. This will flow through to effects on the mining industry of how copper and cobalt are processed, aluminium, ammonia, urea and nitrogen. That's going to be affected. We've seen a 37% price increase in fertilisers. So this is much bigger than fuel.
So what do you think of how the government's handled it so far? Is it being clear about the scale, the nature of the risk? Or do you think it should be much stronger so that people really know what this country's facing?
I mean, to me, it almost echoes the Liberal government's response to COVID. Unclear, quite confused. And so where we are right now, the messaging is poor. It started to say we've got the most fuel we've had for 15 years, as if we were taking credit for it.
I'll simply say, Mr Speaker, we entered this crisis with 36 days' worth of petrol, which is more than previous ministers said was necessary in a worst-case scenario. I might return to that later.
Mr Speaker, this Energy Minister did not initiate the fuel stocks. That was done with Angus Taylor. They've implemented it. So we start talking about, we've got 15 years supply, not to worry about, things are under control. He didn't emphasise that 80% of the world's supply chain is still there. We're not going to run out. We're going to have some shortages and issues eventually. But because the messaging has been so poor, people are getting really concerned. They understandably start to panic, and we've driven up our consumption to about 150% of what it was. Now, the supply chain is not designed for that. It's designed for the normal load.
Now, Mr Speaker, it is the case that demand has doubled, use has not. Use has not, demand has doubled. And as I
But we've got a bunch of children at the moment arguing with each other. So just listen to question time. It is absolutely pathetic. It's mostly these males trying to point score, sort of smirking about it.
And now the Minister for Energy has been caught unprepared for Australia's energy shortages, further punishing Australian households at the bowser and at the supermarket.
The Leader of the Opposition appears to want to just completely dismiss the fact that there is a war going on.
The Minister is providing information to the House on an important issue, so I'm asking for everyone's assistance. Show respect, show restraint. The Minister has the call.
I even watched Tanya Plibersek, who I think's been set up by the Labor Party, go head-to-head with Barnaby on Seven's breakfast television. It was just stunning to watch.
The most helpful thing people could do is just buy the fuel they need and no more. That's the most helpful thing people could do. And that there is the same amount of fuel coming as we've previously had. No, Barnaby, honestly, be a grown-up for a change. Be a grown-up for a change.
So what, instead of saying we've got a problem, let's both sides of politics work together, it's being used by both sides to point score. This is absolute madness, and it's a failure of leadership.
Would you urge businesses, for example, to be more flexible on work from home, let people stay home?
Well, I think that's a sensible thing to do in any environment, really. Work from home has become an important part of
But in this
Australian
oil crisis moment.
Australian working life. And again, I think some people would already be doing that. There are other people for whom that's not an option.
The government's now saying Australians should consider working from home if it's an option to save fuel, or to catch public transport if they can. Do you think that's a good idea? And could we even get to a point where there's not enough fuel, or it's become so expensive that there is no other option than for a lot of people to work from home?
Oh, absolutely. So we should be saying to Australians, look, in order to make sure those reserves we've got are as much as possible to deal with what's coming at us, let's work from home. Don't panic, but let's see how we can reduce our consumption. And for heaven's sake, please don't go out and buy more than you absolutely have to have. That's just common sense. But I think the issue is, because their messaging is confused, I don't think they've got the legislative authority at the federal level to actually start to control the market. And the reason I say that is that one of the reports that came out in 2019 said the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act is not fit for purpose. It takes so long to go through the various stages and then eventually to have the Governor-General sign off a proclamation of an emergency. It won't work. So I really have this gut feel that they haven't changed the Act enough to actually allow a very rapid movement to, hang on, we've got to do something and take control. I really suspect he hasn't got the tool set.
John, other countries, they're starting to prioritise their own oil and gas supply, and we've seen that especially in Asia. They're capping petrol prices, banning the export of refined products. But what is it that we can do here in Australia? Do we have levers to pull, or can we negotiate better, or even just pay more than everybody else?
It'll be a combination of things. So every year we export, mostly to Indonesia, Singapore, but a range of other, and Japan with gas, we export the equivalent to 31% of our total transport fuel consumption in a year. We're actually an fossil fuel energy provider to the region. So what we need to say is, we understand what you're doing, but with this energy we're exporting, let's work out how we can do a bilateral deal with each separate country. If we send this much either crude oil or condensate or LNG to you, we want you in return to take part of that, refine that and send that back to us. And we're paying each other to do this because we also need to look after our people. If they say, no, we're not going to do it, then we should be looking at, okay, who do we sell it to? And now people start saying, oh, but we've got contracts. This is not peacetime. We are in a war, but we are talking in public as if it's not a war. And that's a really big problem, because people, oh, it's just life as normal. I'll go and get a couple of jerry cans and I'll do my thing. No, we're in a war circumstance. It's going to have an effect on us. Things are not blowing up down here, but we will have a major effect on our energy security and other things. So we have to change our mentality.
Coming up, failing to game plan, a rogue president. John, you've been warning about our fuel reserves for over a decade now, and you wrote a report back in 2013. You said Australia only had enough emergency stock to cover 3 days' worth of pharmacy supplies, a week of chilled and frozen food, and 3 days' worth of fuel to petrol stations. Has our situation improved much since then?
Well, no, fundamentally. So I wrote a series of 3 reports And then we went on a whole campaign after that. Now, let's talk about what's happened since I wrote those reports. Well, we've gone from 7 refineries we had then down to 2, and the contracts to support them have just been extended till 2030, but there's no guarantee those 2 refineries will decide to stay open. So we're not thinking about what we're going to do then. The other thing is that back in 2013, we didn't have any mandated stocks. That was a huge vulnerability at the time. Now, we were arguing to change that, and eventually the government listened at the time, and thankfully we have mandated stocks. So that's a little improvement. Here's the other problem. The ability to move the fuel around the country is really a problem. We can no longer move fuel around the country by rail, except for a small amount between Esperance and Kalgoorlie. The mining systems have closed rail networks, but the rest of the country, you either hire a ship to move it, which we don't control, or you move it on trucks. So if you think about this logistics system, no ships that we control, 7 refineries down to 2, no rail options, think of that as an artery, that supply chain. Well, it's been really constricted. You know, it's full of cholesterol and a bunch of other stuff. It's hard to make it move. Thankfully, with the stock mandates coming in, we've got a bit of an improvement. But overall, the resilience of our energy system has gone downhill because of the failure of the 2 major political parties to take this seriously.
We've really seen the war in the Gulf escalate over the last few days. We had Israel strike Iran's most important gas field, South Pars.
The hit on Iran's South Pars gas field first drew sharp criticism from Qatar, given it shares that northern end of the facility.
And then the Iranians, they retaliated by hitting Ras Laffan, the world's largest LNG plant in Qatar.
The CEO of Qatar Energy says that Iran's attack wiped out 17% of Qatar's LNG capacity for up to 5 years. That is
Now Trump's issued an ultimatum. He says he'll destroy Iran's power plants if they don't reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
President Donald Trump is threatening an enormous attack on Iran's energy infrastructure if Tehran doesn't allow free navigation through the Strait.
Surely, if he went to that level, that would only make the energy crisis even worse. It seems that this is a really big crunch time right now.
So what you've got, all the scenarios we did years ago, I mean, in the military, I did a lot of scenario work, but also for this work, we never once contemplated that there would be a rogue US president. So what's happened, he's gone in there simplistically and it's backfiring on him and he's worried about the midterms. So he needs to finish it quickly. That damage in Qatar, from what I've been reading today, could take 3 to 5 years to repair. If you start blowing up the other parts of the energy system and Iran can retaliate, because you don't need America's firepower to do this, then we are going to have not only an interruption whilst the war's on, just cut the 20% out for a decade, I think. Could go that long. But we're at a very difficult time where if we're not careful and we allow that guy to pressure us, that will be the dumbest thing that we've done in decades.
John, you're part of this group of 19 former Defence Force leaders, and you've all called on the government to urgently roll out renewable energy, saying it's a matter of national security at this point. Now, of course, the government, it's saying that it is doing that and it doesn't happen overnight, it takes time. So what is it that you actually want them to do now?
Okay.
Because they can't do it straight away.
Sure. So, number one is recognise their role in not actually having been prepared for this. That's the first important thing. And then start to work with across the parties. That's essential. We've got enough smart people in this country to actually work out what to do. We've actually got enough resources if we stop wasting them on stupid things like nuclear submarines and AUKUS. That's not going to happen, but we'll waste a lot of money. The solution, when you think about it, let's go to a simple level. What can we replace on the supply side? Well, biofuels certainly are a key part of this, not the totality. So renewable diesels, sustainable aviation fuels, a bit of ethanol substitution in there. That is a very important one. But when you talk about it, from the right side of politics, and I'll just say right now, I don't support either side of politics. I'm apolitical. From the right side, you'll get, you're greenies and you're woke. No, we're not. We need renewable fuels to substitute there to give us our energy security. That doesn't quite align with the rhetoric from the far right. But you also have to ensure that you have fossil fuels. Could we perhaps take that huge amount of crude oil we export and find a way of refining a bit of that? Because when I then face the argument from the far left, No more fossil fuels ever. Yeah, okay, but we're going through an energy transition. The fossil fuels also give you key chemicals, medicines, plastic, a whole bunch of stuff we need. So on either side of politics, you've got this black and white view. We're in a mess. It's a teamed approach, and we have to use a whole range of things. There is no coherent system plan in this country to look at that transition. And the last time we did a national energy security assessment, which would allow us to understand our risks and vulnerabilities, was 2011. We're now running for 15 years without a risk assessment. This is strategic stupidity on both sides of politics.
John, thank you so much for joining us.
You're most welcome. I hope I didn't depress you too much.
Also in the news, more than 75% of ABC staff will walk off the job on Wednesday in their first strike in 20 years. Severe disruptions lasting 24 hours are expected across the public broadcasters' news services. Unions say the ABC's offer of a 10% pay rise over 3 years falls short and doesn't address concerns about conditions and penalty rates. And Carl Sandilands has launched legal action against his former radio network over the end of his $100 million contract. His lawyers say the termination was invalid because there was no act of serious misconduct or breach of the contract. Sandilands wants the remainder of his deal paid out in full, but ARN is defending its actions and will fight the shock jock in court. I'm Nicole Johnston. This is 7am. Thanks for listening.